All right, space fans. I'm so glad that so many of you enjoyed my performance of the Etude Suite and that some of you were actually interested in getting a little behind the scenes look at how the patch was put together. So I'm going to do my best to focus on the most important parts of this fairly intricate construction. I'm going to leave a few details out, but I will encourage you that part of that performance was in fact a demonstration. It was a demonstration without words. So hopefully after some of these explanations, the things you saw in that performance will make a lot more sense about what's going on. So I'm going to begin somewhat at the beginning, which is an examination of this Aeolian harp. So presently, we are listening to an Aeolian harp. That is to say, we have a set of harmonics here, which are the strings of the harp. The first, second, fourth, and eighth harmonic, of course, are all related to the fundamental as the octaves go. And the third and the sixth harmonic give us the fifth and 10th harmonic, which are actually, they don't really belong to the Aeolian mode. So the fifth harmonic is turned off here, and I just turned off the 10th harmonic there. The seventh harmonic is a dominant seventh note, that is in the Aeolian scale, and a major second is also in the Aeolian scale. So what's happening right now is that the breeze of this little oscillator here is fed by our fluctuating random voltage B, and it's just gently blowing that frequency up and down the scale and striking those strings as it goes. The 296E is registering the frequency peaks, and it's sending those signals, if they're interesting harmonics, over here to our digital patch bay so that we can change the modality of the strings. And if they're boring strings like the fundamentals or the octaves, that just goes straight into our harp. We can increase the speed of the breeze by changing our fluctuating random voltage B. There we go, we're getting a little bit more breeze going on. But fundamentally, that's our Aeolian harp, and we can think of the way in which we move across this Aeolian pattern as a kind of melody. But more importantly, let's just think of it as a dimension, a melodic dimension. There's a second dimension that we can put into this equation. I'm going to slow the harp back down. And that second dimension is what is the fundamental frequency that's driving this harp. So right now, we're tuned to a C, and we're basically just picking off octaves, which is pretty boring. If I swing this around to something really crazy, like the chromatic scale, and if I increase the rate at which we inject new notes into the system, which I can do here, now we're just wandering through the chromatic scale, but that chromatic scale is also plucking, as we wander through, harmonics related to the Aeolian mode of the fundamental. So since we're taking this kind of random walk through our fundamental tones, these harmonics also sound fairly random. Yes, they are Aeolian, but Aeolian to random, still pretty random. But if we change this, there, now we have an Aeolian scale going in, and we have Aeolian harmonics going across. So now we have kind of a two-dimensional melodic structure. We haven't actually, we've solved some problems, but we've also created some problems. And that is that if we pick a particular fundamental note, and then we pluck the strings across that, that all sounds nice and Aeolian, but when we go to the next note in the Aeolian scale, the new harmonics may no longer necessarily be in the Aeolian scale of the previous note. So as we walk through, we're consistent with ourself, but not necessarily consistent with the previous note. Why does that matter? Well, we can separate the notes that we're playing on our harp from a concept of what are the notes that we're actually listening to in our more conventional melody. So my purple wire here, this is the harp. I'm going to motivate it there. This is what I call my lead instrument. And now, if I slow my harp down, and if I increase the rate of my lead, as the lead moves through its own Aeolian scale, and it's going to be C Aeolian, it may come in funny contact with the harmonics of whatever the harp is playing, because the harp may be stuck on a note from the past. So what happens? What happens is we get possibly interesting voice leading. We get possibly something that sounds like a clam, and that's where the inspiration of the etude suite comes in. What is the AI that makes sense as opposed to nonsense of what we hear? And what I discovered in the process of sort of putting this together was that it helped a lot to have the idea that we've got these two different instruments, and one of them can be more the pedal tones and one can be more the lead. And even if we have pedal tones with harmonics going across, we can still get interesting shapes and sounds. I'm going to change the scale just to keep things interesting. Here we are, the Phrygian Natural 3. And we're going to move this from an Aeolian scale to a Phrygian Natural 3. The Phrygian scale doesn't have a major second, so that's why the 9th harmonic is turned off. And because it does have the 5th harmonic, it should also have the 10th harmonic. So I'm going to turn that back on. So now we have this different scale, and again, we have these slowly moving pedal tones articulated by maybe a slightly more agitated breeze. And we have this lead, but now let's play around with who moves faster and who moves slower. If I speed up the lead, what we hear here is that the lead and the harp may move at the same speed, but at different times, and it sounds a little bit like a call and response. Now, it is a function of the fluctuating random voltages as to how quickly that moves up and down, and the random motion of moving. Does it keep moving in one direction, or does it shift back and forth? I also have a pulse balloon here, which counts how many times it sees a pulse, and then I can control it so that either I pause after a large jump down, or I pause after a large jump up. So we pause at the top. Do-do-do. That's the pause at the top. Pause at the bottom. And then I could have no pause. Now the pauses that you're hearing there is actually repeated. It's trying to repeat notes. And we don't have any articulation on that. We can put some articulation on it if we wanted to. But fundamentally, we're just getting that. Now, hearing the the harp and the lead playing off of each other gives us one kind of vibe. But again, if we dramatically change the rate at which one of these articulates, if our lead moves slowly, we get a more meditative exploration of this modality. And if we want to speed up our harp, kind of an interesting exploration of that Phrygian natural third mode as the lead wanders around randomly. Now, one thing that I've noticed is that sometimes instead of having these two going against each other, sometimes it's cool to go in unison. We've got two different kinds of unisons we can look at. If we send both of them off of our harp, remember our harp has got this little extra function here which delays based on this interior parameter. So when the knob is pointing more vertically, it should be changing more frequently. And then just bump it along. That's kind of still vertical. There, now it's on a slower path. So it's going to move more slowly. Anyway, this is the uneven beat of the harp. But we can also put it on the more even beat of the lead. Now notice what's happened. We're still playing these harmonics, but now what it sounds like is parallel diatonic soloing. And even when the harp is in motion and making those runs, we read it completely differently than two independent melodies playing. We read it as a solo with diatonic extensions, which is cool. Could be cool. And again, you'll notice that because our lead does not have this concept of a state-based delay, it's going to be a much more regular rhythm. And if we want to, we can put those pauses in at the top or the bottom. Right now we're programmed to pause at the top and pause at the bottom. And we can hear that same effect there. But now, totally different groove because we're in a state-based world. And I want to point out one other thing which I think is also very, very important, and that is the way that the personality of the source of uncertainty works. We've been listening to a middle setting where there's some time-based correlation, which means that as we go from note to note, it's gonna be a note closer in value, not totally far away compared to the first note, so that it gives us a not totally disjointed progression. If we move a little bit further over, now we get something which is very much a very kind of linear sounding thing, where it's noodling its way up and noodling its way down. But we could also have them be very disjointed. And that could be cool too. And so what we have now is we've got an opportunity to control the rhythmic basis of the two voices. We've got the opportunity to decide whether those harmonics function more as an alternative melody or as a melodic extension of the unison playing. And in the version that I showed on YouTube, in that particular performance, I had set something up so that I could use knobs to control how much one voice was following the other. But it was very confusing and complicated to me. I was constantly confusing myself. I was driving myself bananas trying to work out, which instrument was in the lead, which one was following, which notes were dominant, etc., etc. And as I thought about this, going bananas, I realized, bananas! I can use banana connectors. And so I removed some of the complexity from the patch, and I made it so that I could just choose, where do I want to drive the lead from? Do I want to drive it from a combined harp and lead? Just the lead? Just the harp? Do I want to have an ungoverned lead so this doesn't have any pause? Here's an interesting thing. Let's take the pause out of the lead, put the pause in the harp. So they'll track each other and then split, track and split, and of course the harp is flowing freely, so sometimes you might not even notice that they've split apart. Sometimes you might notice that they do. And again, here we are pausing on the low. We can pause on the high. Or we could reverse that. Now the harp is moving in an ungoverned way, sorry. There we go. So now the lead is governed by this pulse balloon, and the harp is just playing the lead's ungoverned rhythm. And of course, our diatonic extensions. Kind of cool. Kind of cool how we can get these different voices playing independently, playing together, sounding like it's part of the timbre, or sounding like it's part of its own melodic form. I find that absolutely fascinating. And again, what's going on here is that we are deriving from the 296 this scale that is governed by our selection of harmonics, and that basically gives us a mode. And this gives us basically a key. And so we can wander the keys. I'm just moving it up a half step. Moving it up a half step. So those are the keys. Moving it back down to C. And now, there's no law that says that our harmonics have to actually max up our modes, especially when we start thinking about these bell tones. It's kind of groovy to have bells that are a little bit out of tune. So we can shift this over to Lydian flat 7 while staying in Phrygian natural 3 here. And all hell breaks loose because now we've got harmonics that are fifths, but in the Lydian scale, there are no fifths. So make of that what you will. So from a musician's point of view, we have this opportunity of deciding what is the particular inspiration for the lead player. Is it to be more linear in the run pattern, to be more random in the run pattern, or to be somewhere in between? Is it more interesting to have two different voices that are just different in terms of beginnings and ends of phrases based on high and low register? Is it more interesting to really make it sound like there are two different people playing a call and response? Here it sounds like we just have two different people noodling with the same scale. Kind of bizarre. Do we want them playing in true unison with the diatonic extension? Do we want to turn off these interesting harmonics? And now the 1, 2, 4, and 8 harmonics, they really just sound like they're part of the timbre package. I want to finish up by just talking briefly, and you guys can do the math online yourself. But I want to talk just because I think this is a great example. I've switched us here. We're now looking at a Mixolydian harp over a Mixolydian scale. And if you do the math, what you'll see is that all of these harmonics belong in the Mixolydian scale, and that's great. But as we wander from, say, a G to an A, the harmonics for the A no longer necessarily fit the G Mixolydian scale. And so it's kind of interesting to see how the mind resolves that tension. I think what actually makes this sound musical is that it's activating the AI within our own brains, or at least the I within our own brains, the intelligence, to make sense of it. And that little challenge, that little exercise, is what makes it so much fun to listen to, and certainly to play. So hopefully this explanation has helped you understand how some basic ideas of music theory, scales, modes, harmonics, harmonic series, rhythmic relationships, the idea of what's in the foreground, what's in the background, who's following what, who's leading what. All of these parameters allow us many more degrees of freedom than, say, Bach had when he looked at a prime pattern, an inversion, a retrograde, and a retrograde inversion as, all the variations that are possible. Here, we've got a lot of variations we can play with. So I hope that's been fun. I hope you have enjoyed this little excursion into my corner of the Buklidian universe. And I invite your comments, invite you to share this video with folks who might be interested in it. And who knows, maybe it'll become as popular as the Etude Suite performance I did a couple of weeks ago. Who knows?